Hello, my name is Adrian, and welcome to the Consulting Academy. You are watching the Introduction to the Case Interview series, and this is the first lesson of the series. In this lesson, we're going to cover a variety of topics, including number one, what is the case interview? Number two, what are the different types of case interviews? Number three, the different components of a case interview. And number four, why consulting firms even require a case interview in the first place. But before we begin, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I worked at the Boston Consulting Group as a consultant, where I was also part of the recruiting team. Over the years, I've reviewed hundreds of CVs and cover letters and even administered numerous round zero interviews. After coaching many people and helping them getting into MBB, I decided that I want to start my own consulting coaching practice. Which brings me here today. My team of coaches and I are happy to share our experience across many different offices. So without further ado, let us jump into it. So let's start with the basics. What is the case interview? A case interview is a business problem that you will likely encounter if you're applying to the top consulting firms. Generally speaking, these case interviews require you to solve a challenging business case within a very short time frame. And this could involve multiple things such as calculations and brainstorming. If you are applying to the top consulting firms such as McKinsey, Bain, and BCG, there are two types of case interviews that you generally need to prepare for. Number one is the interviewer-led interview. This is a typical interview style where the interviewer would ask you a series of questions, and you, as an interviewee, will be expected to answer them with an analytical and data-driven approach. Number two, which is debatably the more challenging one and the focus of this course, is the interviewee-led interview. In this interviewing style, you as the candidate would only be given a small amount of information. In order to solve the case, you have to ask a series of questions strategically to get to the most effective solution. This interview style is about finding the quickest way to get to a reliable recommendation, which is often what you have to do as a management consultant. Note that most people struggle with this format as it requires a perfect combination of logical thinking, communication, and business intuition. We choose to focus on the style for this course because if you master the interviewee-led interview, you really should do well in the interviewer-led interview as well. So now that you know the style of the interviews, the next question is, what exactly do I have to do in each case? And we understand that for a lot of beginners, this could be very intimidating. So to make life easier, we've broken down the case interview into three major components: the opening, the analysis, and the closing. So let's start with the opening. The opening is often the easiest part of the case, but it's one that we will focus on a lot in this course because it's very important that you get this part right before you move on to the analysis. If you have a bad opening, it doesn't really matter how good your analysis is, you usually won't get to the most reliable recommendation, which is why we place a lot of emphasis on the opening. Some parts of the opening include recapping the prompt, asking clarifying objectives, clarifying the objective, and building a hypothesis to set yourself up for the rest of the case. Next part is analysis. This is a part that many people get intimidated by, especially if they're not from a business background. However, it's not actually that difficult to get to a solid level. There are a few business concepts that you could easily apply to your case, and we're going to teach you how to most effectively apply these concepts. In addition to that, there's also a more efficient way that you can approach your quantitative analysis, and we're going to tell you the best way for you to do that. And last but not least, the closing. Many people sleep on this part because they think that the interview is over once they've done the correct analysis. However, in reality, this part is very important. This is where many consulting firms assess whether you're good enough to make the cut and actually present your insights in front of the client. What closing a case usually entails is providing a 30-second summary along with some next steps that the clients could take. The next steps in particular is a very good opportunity for you to present your practicality and effectiveness. Last part we want to cover today is the question of why consulting firms require a case interview in the first place. It's important because we want you to understand what exactly consulting firms are looked for and why you're even doing this in the first place. And to break this down, we have 4 key reasons why this is important to consulting firms: problem solving and insight, communication and presence, practicality and effectiveness, and client interaction. These four things are essentially the things that consulting firms assess when you're in a case interview. More often than not, it's not just enough to get the right answer. You have to find the best way to do it and to also show off that you would be a good consultant. Now, if this stresses you out, don't worry. Let's take it step by step. The way that you get to the level that you want is by a lot of practice, which is why our tip of the day today is to spread out your case interview practices. Now, many people try to cram their practices in the weeks leading up to their interview, but this is actually a really risky strategy as most people need time to improve. It's important for you to take your time to experiment with different approaches and to find the one that you're most comfortable with. It's also important for preventing burnout. You don't want to get so sick of cases that you underperform on the actual day of the interview. On top of that, it's equally as important to spend time reflecting on how you performed in previous cases and to come up with pointers on how to improve. So that's it for today. We hope you enjoyed this session. Please tune in next time to know what to do when you're opening a case interview. My name is Adrian, and I'll see you next time.